There comes a moment in life when you feel like everything is just right. Like right now, I'm standing on the deck of our house, looking out over the glittering night view of the San Francisco Bay Area, a glass of 12-year-old whiskey in my hand. The lights of the Golden Gate Bridge loom in the distance through the fog, like a scene from a fairy tale. I, Alex Foster, 35, am a senior partner at Sequoia Capital, one of Silicon Valley's top venture capital firms. And my wife Olivia, 30, is not only one of the most popular yoga instructors in the Bay Area, but also teaches art history part-time at the San Francisco Art Institute. Our lives, to an outsider, are probably the perfect illustration of the American dream. 5 years of marriage, 8 years of love. Olivia is like a gift from God. She is smart, beautiful, and energetic. I remember the first time we met was at a tech startup forum. She was an art school student and came to the forum looking for inspiration. I, on the other hand, had just established myself at Sequoia and was very ambitious. Our encounter was like a collision of rationality and sensibility that produced dazzling sparks. Alex, are you geeking out again? Olivia's voice pulls me back to reality. She walks out onto the patio with 2 plates of delicate pasta, her smile brighter than a pearl in the moonlight. Just thinking about how lucky we are. I took the plate and gave her a soft kiss on the forehead. After dinner, we snuggled up on the couch and watched reruns of Friends. Olivia especially loved the show, and her laughter always made me forget about my troubles at work whenever I saw a funny episode. Just then, my cell phone vibrated. Job news? Olivia asked curiously. Could be. I replied casually, turning on my cell phone. The message that flashed on the screen, however, made my heart skip a beat. Your wife is hiding something from you. The sender was an unfamiliar number. I subconsciously glanced at Olivia, who was still focused on the TV program and didn't seem to notice my abnormality. I tried to keep my voice calm. Honey, I have to take care of an urgent job. It might take a while. Don't get too tired, Olivia said gently, and handed me a pillow along the way. I forced myself to walk into my study, closed the door, and took a deep breath. Opening that message again, my mind began to race. Was this a prank? Or was someone deliberately messing with it? Or maybe, I didn't dare to keep thinking about it. I started reviewing Olivia's behavior recently. Has she been working a lot of overtime lately? Seemed to have mentioned attending a yoga seminar? Wait, that new art school lecturer, Tony or something. Aren't they getting a little close? I shook my head, trying to shake off the nonsense. Olivia wasn't that kind of person, and we'd always had a good relationship, hadn't we? But deep inside, a small voice questions, really? I opened my computer and hesitantly clicked on Olivia's social media accounts. We knew each other's passwords, a testament to the absolute trust we had agreed upon. At the moment, however, I felt like a thief, sneaking through her personal space. At first, it was business as usual. Photos of yoga classes, student work on display, selfies of us having dinner. But as I scrolled through the developments from a couple weeks ago, my heart sank. A couple of photos caught my attention. It was an art school reception and Olivia was standing in the middle of a group of colleagues. And beside her, there was a handsome young man whose hand seemed to be resting on Olivia's back waist. In the comment section below the photo, someone chimed in, Olivia and Tony stand so well together. Tony, yes, the new lecturer. My hand shook a little as my mouse clicked uncontrollably on Tony's homepage. Their interactions were disturbingly frequent. Likes, comments, private jokes, all of which signaled a closeness beyond that of ordinary coworkers. Just then I heard Olivia's voice from the living room. Honey, I have to get up early tomorrow for a yoga seminar, so I'm going to bed first. Oh, I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. Okay, good night. I'll take care of work for a little while longer, and then I'll come. Waiting to make sure Olivia was asleep, I crept into the living room and grabbed her cell phone. Entering the passcode, that symbol of trust that I had been so proud of, was now the key to uncovering the truth. My fingers slid across the screen, my heart beating like thunder. Then I saw the messages. The messages I should never have seen. My world fell apart in that moment. 5 years of marriage, 8 years of love. Turns out, it was all based on an elaborate lie. As I sat alone in my darkened living room, The night view of San Francisco outside my window was still sparkling. At this moment, however, the twinkling lights were no longer a fairy tale, but an ironic symbol mocking my naivety and stupidity. I picked up my whiskey and took a drink. Life had dealt me a blow, but I, Alex Foster, would never go down. I began to think about what to do next. Should I question Olivia directly, or should I investigate covertly? Or maybe, my eyes fall on the business card on the coffee table, the contact information for a private investigator. In any case, I know that from tonight on, everything will be different. This is not the end, but a new beginning. A story of betrayal, truth, and rebirth is unfolding. Early morning sunlight shone through the curtains into my bedroom, and I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the couch in the den. My head aches and the hangover gives me a wave of nausea. The memories of last night came flooding back, and I hoped it was just a nightmare. But the whiskey bottles scattered on the coffee table reminded me relentlessly that this was stark reality. Olivia was already out the door, and the house was awfully quiet. I shuffled into the bathroom. The man in the mirror was haggard, his eyes bloodshot. I laughed bitterly and shook my head. How could I manage hundreds of millions of dollars in investments with this demeanor? Cold water slapped against my face as I tried to clear my head. It was Friday, and there was a full day of work to deal with. More importantly, I needed time to think hard about what to do next. I change into a dark gray tailored suit, tie my tie, and try to act like everything is normal. On the drive to the office, I kept thinking back over the past few months, trying to figure out when I started losing Olivia. Just as I arrived at the office, my assistant Jenny rushed over. Alex, Greylock Partners is pressing for Memo AI's investment report, saying it's needed for the board meeting next Monday. I froze for a moment. I can't believe I completely forgot about this important report. Tell them they'll have it this afternoon, I said with fake calm. Closing the door to my office, I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus. Memo AI was a promising AI startup, and tens of millions of dollars of investment were at stake in this report. I had to be professional and not let personal issues interfere with my work. However, whenever I tried to analyze the company's data, images of Olivia with the man named Tony would always come to mind. I rubbed my temples in annoyance and decided to call a private investigator first. Mr. Foster, this is Mike Chun, came a deep voice on the other end of the line. I hear you need some assistance? I hesitated, but spoke. Yes, I need you to help me investigate someone, my wife. Saying the words felt worse than I thought it would. Mike, obviously used to such requests, calmly asked for some basic information and then said, I understand. I'll get started on the investigation as soon as I can, and I promise to keep it absolutely confidential. When do you probably need the results? The sooner the better, I said, but make sure the information is accurate. After hanging up the phone, I felt a wave of exhaustion. I never thought I would one day hire someone to investigate my wife. It felt like tearing our marriage apart with my own hands. In the afternoon, I barely finished the Memo AI investment report. Just as I was about to leave the office, Jenny came rushing in again. Alex, Olivia called and said she has an impromptu faculty meeting tonight and might be home late. My heart sank. Was it a real meeting or a date with Tony? I nodded with forced composure. Thanks, I got it. On the drive home, I made a ghostly turn toward the art college where Olivia works. It's nightfall and the campus is sparsely populated. I parked across the street and turned out the lights, my heart beating like a drum. After about an hour or so, I saw Olivia coming out of the main building. She didn't leave straight away, but stood on the steps as if waiting for someone. It wasn't long before a tall figure appeared beside her. Even in the dim streetlight, I recognized it as Tony. I watched them walk side by side toward the parking lot, talking animatedly, and Tony opens the door for Olivia, his hands seeming to linger on her waist for a second longer. My knuckles whitened from gripping the steering wheel so tightly, anger, jealousy, and a deep sense of betrayal churning inside me. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Olivia's car disappeared into the night. I leaned back in my seat, feeling more alone and confused than ever. Should I trust Olivia? Maybe it's just a co-worker? But the way Tony looked at her, that's not the way you look at a co-worker. I shook my head and started the car. On the way home, I kept rehearsing various confrontation scenarios in my mind. Should I confront Olivia directly, or should I continue to observe and gather more evidence? Or should I pretend that it's business as usual and give our marriage a chance to start over? The house was dark when I pushed open the door. I turned on the light and saw a note sitting on the coffee table. Honey, there's an impromptu meeting tonight, so I might be late. There's lasagna in the fridge. Remember to warm it up before you eat it. Love you, Olivia. I stared at the love you and felt a mixture of emotions. If this is true, why did you betray me? If it's not true, how can you say it so easily? I grabbed the remote and turned on the TV, trying to fill the emptiness inside me with the cacophony of sound. However, no channel could divert my attention. Finally, I turned off the TV and poured myself a glass of whiskey. Sitting in the dark, I began to think back to our little moments. Olivia's beaming face on our first date, her tears of surprise when I proposed, our honeymoon. These fond memories now carry a tinge of bitterness. I don't know how long I sat in the darkness until I heard the sound of a key being inserted into the lock hole. I quickly stood up and turned on the living room light. Olivia pushed her way in and was visibly taken aback when she saw me. Alex, why are you sitting in the dark? Trying to keep my emotions in check, I calmly asked, how was the meeting? Oh, it's just routine stuff. Nothing special. She replied casually, then looked at me with concern. Are you okay? It doesn't look too good. I forced out a smile, probably too tired from work. Have you eaten? Well, the meeting ordered takeout. She came over and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. I'm going to take a shower first. You have an early night? I clenched my fists as I watched Olivia's back going up the stairs. The scent of her perfume, if anything, wasn't her usual one, a detail that stung me like a sharp blade. I knew that our marriage was standing on the edge of a cliff, and I, Alex Foster, had to make a decision. Fight it or let it fall into the abyss. In any case, I know that from today on, our relationship will never go back to the way it was. For the next week, I lived a lie that I had woven myself. Every morning, I practiced in front of the mirror how to smile as if nothing had happened, how to talk to Olivia in the usual tone of voice. The pretense sickened me, but I needed time and hard evidence. I was reviewing a new investment proposal in my office on Wednesday afternoon when my cell phone suddenly vibrated. It was Mike, the private investigator. Mr. Foster, his voice was low and cautious. I have some findings I need to report to you. Is it convenient to meet now? My heart is racing steeply. 20 minutes, Dolores Park, usual place. Hanging up, I told Jenny I had an urgent meeting to attend and walked quickly to the elevator. The early summer sun was warm and bright in Dolores Park. I found the bench I always sit on and Mike was already there waiting. Mr. Foster. He nods in greeting and hands me a brown envelope. I took a deep breath and opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of photos and a detailed report. The photos showed Olivia and Tony interacting intimately in a variety of settings: restaurants, hotels, and even that movie theater we frequented. The last photo broke my heart completely. It was of them kissing passionately in a hotel room. The video footage I've uploaded to your encrypted email. Mike said calmly, according to my investigation, this has been going on for at least 3 months. I nodded woodenly, my voice hoarse. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Foster, he hesitated. I know it's difficult, but remember, it's not your fault. I smiled bitterly and didn't reply. Mike had the good sense to leave, leaving me sitting alone on the bench, feeling the world crumble beneath me. I don't know how long it took me to come back from my trance. The sun was already setting in the west, and the crowd in the park was thinning out. I stood up, feeling my bones rattle. On the drive home, my mind went blank. It wasn't until I was standing in front of my house that I realized I hadn't even thought about how I was going to face Olivia, but I had no choice. Pushing open the door, the aroma wafted through the house. Olivia was busy in the kitchen, and when she saw me come back, she smiled and said, "Honey, I made your favorite grilled steak today." I look at her, the woman I've loved for 8 years, and at the moment she feels so strange. "Olivia," I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly calm, "we need to talk?" Her smile froze as if she sensed something. "What's wrong, Alex? Is something wrong?" I walked to the living room and pulled the brown envelope out of my briefcase, spreading the pictures inside one by one on the coffee table. You tell me what's going on. Olivia's face instantly turned pale as she shakily reached for one of the photos before falling helplessly onto the couch. Alex, I, I can explain. Explain? I sneered. Explain how you hung out with another man behind my back for 3 months? Explain how you came back to me as if nothing had happened. Tears begin to well up from Olivia's eyes. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened to me. Tony, he makes me feel. Feeling what? I interrupted her. Feeling young? Feeling exciting? Or feeling free of a boring husband? It's not like that. Olivia cried. I love you, Alex. I really do. Love me? I laughed sarcastically. If that's what you love, then I'd rather you hate me. We just stood there in a stalemate, the smell of pain and betrayal in the air. I look at Olivia, trying to find a glimpse of the woman I once loved in her face, but all I see is a stranger. Alex, Olivia finally spoke, her voice choking. I know I made a terrible mistake, but please give me a chance to make it right. I shook my head, feeling a wave of exhaustion I'd never felt before. Olivia, don't you understand? The question isn't whether or not you can make amends. The problem is that I will never trust you again. Every time you say you have to work late, every time you go out to meet your friends, I'm skeptical. What's the point of having a marriage like this? Olivia breaks down and cries, but I find myself unable to move for her tears. I stood up and walked towards the stairs. I'll be sleeping in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow I'll move out for a while. As for after that, we all need to think about it. I didn't wait for her to answer before heading upstairs to gather the essentials. Lying on the bed in the guest room, I stared at the ceiling and thought back over the crazy day. I thought the truth would come out and make me feel better, but it did, and I felt more confused and alone than ever. I pulled out my cell phone and hesitated before dialing my sister Sarah's number. Alex, said Sarah with concern in her voice, calling this late. Is something wrong? I took a deep breath and tried to get a grip on my emotions. Sarah, I need you. There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment, then Sarah said firmly, I'm here, Alex. Tell me what happened. And so, in the darkness of the guest room, I confided everything to my sister. By the time I finished, I was in tears. Hey, Alex, Sarah sighed. I'm sorry you're going through this. Remember, you're not alone. I'll support you in whatever decision you make. After hanging up the phone, I felt slightly better inside. I knew that there was still a long, hard road ahead, but at least I wasn't fighting alone. And so, with mixed feelings, I slowly fell into a restless sleep. Tomorrow would be a fresh start, for better or for worse. Sunlight pours into the room through a crack in the curtains and I open my eyes, not knowing where I am for a moment. The memories of last night come flooding back and I realize I'm lying on the bed in the guest room. There's a subtle rattle from downstairs. It must be Olivia in the kitchen. I sighed and forced myself to get up and face the brutal morning. Packing my bags, I take a deep breath and walk down the stairs. Olivia is sitting at the dining room table with a cup of coffee in both hands, her eyes red and swollen, obviously having had a sleepless night. Seeing me, she tries to squeeze out a smile, but fails. Alex, her voice was hoarse, do you really have to go? I nodded, trying to keep my tone calm. I need some time and space. It's good for both of us. Olivia stands up and tries to get closer to me, but then hesitantly stops. Can we just talk about it again? Maybe we can figure this out together. I smiled bitterly. Olivia, there's no point in talking about anything right now. We both need time to think things through. Tears gathered in her eyes again, but this time, I wasn't moved by them. I picked up my bags and walked to the door. Alex, she whispered behind me. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't turn around, just nodded and closed the door behind me. On the drive to Sarah's house, I felt a strange sense of relief. Even though there was still pain inside, at least I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to force a smile or pretend that everything was fine. Sarah greeted me at the door and gave me a warm hug without saying a word. Come on, little brother, she said softly. I've got the guest room for you. The next few days were like a walking corpse. During the day, I forced myself to focus on my work, reviewing investment reports, attending meetings, and making decisions. But whenever night fell, when I was alone, the images kept flashing in my mind. The pictures of Olivia and Tony together, their intimate smiles, the kiss. I began to question myself. Was I working too much and ignoring Olivia's feelings? When did the cracks start to appear in our marriage? Could I have done something to save it? Sarah saw my pain, and one night she sat down next to me and gently tapped me on the shoulder. "Alex," she said gently, "have you considered seeking professional help? Maybe talking to a counselor would help." At first, I was a little resistant. In Silicon Valley, showing vulnerability is like bleeding in a shark tank. But Sarah's persistence eventually convinced me. The first time I walked into Dr. Max's clinic, I felt both nervous and embarrassed. But over time, I found myself looking forward to this weekly session as Dr. Chun helped me dissect my emotions and face my inner fears and insecurities. "Alex," Dr. Max said at one point, "betrayal is indeed a great trauma. But remember, Olivia's behavior reflects her choices, not your values. You did nothing wrong." Those words were like a bolt of lightning that illuminated the darkness within me. I began to realize that I had been subconsciously blaming myself for Olivia's betrayal, believing that it was my own inadequacies that led to her betrayal. At the same time, I began to revisit our marriage. I thought back to the weekends that were taken up by work, the anniversaries that were missed in preparation for new projects. I'm not excusing Olivia's behavior, but I admit I'm to blame. One night, I worked up the courage to send Olivia a text. "Can we meet and talk?" We had an appointment at a quiet cafe. My heart still skipped a beat when I saw Olivia walk in. She looked much more haggard, with noticeable dark circles under her eyes. "Hi," she whispered, sitting down carefully. "Hi," I responded, then took a deep breath. "Olivia, this whole time I've been thinking about our marriage, everything that's happened. I think we both need to talk honestly." For the next 2 hours, we had a real conversation. There were no accusations, no defenses, just honest exchanges. Olivia confessed how her cheating with Tony began, her internal struggles and guilt. I also admitted my own negligence and shortcomings in my marriage. By the end of the conversation, we were both in tears. Though the pain remained, I felt a strange peace. "Alex," Olivia finally said, "I know my behavior has probably ruined everything, but if you're willing, I really want to save our marriage." I looked into her eyes and saw genuine remorse and hope. But I also know that rebuilding trust takes time and effort on both sides. "Olivia," I whispered, "I can't give you an answer right now. We both need time. Maybe we should focus on ourselves first and figure out what we really want." She nodded, understanding and a hint of disappointment in her eyes. The night sky was dotted with stars as I left the cafe. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air of San Francisco. The future was still full of uncertainty, but at least I was beginning to see a glimmer of hope. I know that regardless of the outcome, this experience will be an important lesson in my life. It has taught me to face my pain, to face the truth head-on, and to reconnect with myself. Back at Sarah's house, I sat on the balcony and looked out at the city lights in the distance. I pulled out my cell phone and hesitated before dialing a number. "Hello, this is Dr. Max's office." "Hello," I said, "I'm Alex Foster. I'd like to schedule a counseling appointment for next week. Life has dealt me a punch in the gut, but I've decided to get up and move on. Whatever awaits me ahead, I'm ready for it." 3 months have passed. Fall crept in, and the streets of San Francisco were covered in golden leaves. My life was getting back on track, at least on the surface. Weekly counseling sessions taught me how to better handle my emotions, and work became the focus of my life again. That afternoon, I was about to leave the office for an investor meeting when Jenny came rushing over. "Alex, there's a man who says he must see you about Mimo AI." I frowned. Mimo AI is an AI startup we invested in a few months ago and has been doing quite well lately. "Let him wait. I have a meeting too." The words were barely out of his mouth when a familiar voice came from the doorway. "Alex Foster?" I turned around and froze. Standing there was none other than Tony, the man Olivia was having an affair with. In an instant, a variety of emotions tumbled through me. Anger, jealousy, confusion. But years of experience in the mall made me quickly collect my expression. Jenny, cancel my meeting. I said calmly, come in, this gentleman. Tony walked into the office looking a little rattled. I gestured for him to sit down, while I leaned against the edge of the desk and crossed my arms. Say, what are you doing here? My tone was cold. Tony took a deep breath. First of all, I want to apologize for what happened earlier. I know it's probably pointless, but I'm really sorry. I sneered. If you're here to seek forgiveness, then you can go. He shook his head. No, I'm here because of Memo AI. Alex, I know you guys invested in this company, but you may have been scammed. The words caught my attention. What do you mean? Tony took out a stack of documents from his bag. I recently joined Memo AI's technical team. While doing a code review, I found something suspicious. Their core algorithm might be plagiarized, and there are problems with the financial statements. I took the file and quickly skimmed through it. If this information is true, then Memo AI is likely to face huge legal risks, and our investment will be in vain. Why are you telling me this? I asked, still keeping my guard up. Tony smiled bitterly. I know you probably don't believe me, but I do want to make up for some past mistakes. Moreover, this concerns everyone's interests. If Memo AI closes down, many people will lose their jobs and investors will lose a lot of money. I stared at Tony for a long time, trying to determine his true intentions. Finally, I said, I need time to verify this information. Tony nodded and stood up. I understand. Here's my contact info. Feel free to contact me if you need more information. Immediately after dropping Tony off, I gathered the company's legal and technical teams. Over the next few weeks, we dug deeper into Memo AI's situation. The results confirmed Tony's story. Memo AI did have serious technical and financial problems. This discovery puts me in a dilemma. On the one hand, I have a responsibility to protect the interests of my investors. On the other hand, a direct revelation of Memo AI's problems could trigger market turmoil and affect the confidence of the entire tech community. After much deliberation, I decided to take a more cautious approach. I contacted the founders of Memo AI privately and gave them an opportunity to explain and correct the issues. At the same time, I began to develop a plan to minimize possible losses. I had to contact Tony several times during the process. Though still resisting inwardly, I have to admit that his expertise has been a great help. Slowly, I began to see him in a different light. One night, after taking care of business at Memo AI, Tony hesitantly asked me, Alex, I know this may not be appropriate, but can you tell me how Olivia is doing? I was silent for a moment, then said, We've separated. She moved to Los Angeles and got a new job there. Tony nodded, a flash of guilt in his eyes. I'm sorry. Truly. I want you to know that relationship ended a long time ago. It was a mistake from the beginning. I looked at Tony and felt a sudden wave of exhaustion. Tony, let bygones be bygones. Right now, we have more important things to deal with. He nodded solemnly. You're right. Thank you, Alex, for giving me this chance to make up for some past mistakes. Walking out of my office, I stood in the San Francisco night air, feeling the cool ocean breeze. I was reminded of what Dr. Max said, life sometimes teaches us lessons in the most unexpected ways. Indeed, who would have thought that a former love rival would become the key to exposing commercial fraud? This experience has taught me that human nature is complex and things are not always black and white. Back at my apartment, I sat on my balcony and looked out at the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. I took out my cell phone and, after some hesitation, dialed Olivia's number. Alex, she asked with surprise in her voice. Hi, Olivia, I said, feeling a strange calmness. I was just wondering, how are you doing in LA? There was silence on the other end of the line for a moment, and then she whispered, I'm pretty good. The new job is challenging, but I like it. How about you? I'm okay too. I paused. Olivia, I think we all need to move on. Yeah, her voice caught a little. Alex again. I'm sorry. I wish you the best. After hanging up the phone, I took a deep breath. I felt an unprecedented sense of relief, as if years of burdens had finally been lifted. I know that there is still a long road ahead, that things with Memo AI are not yet fully resolved, and that my life is still being rebuilt. But at this moment, I feel a long overdue sense of hope. Perhaps this is the beginning of rebirth. As the investigation into Memo AI deepened, things became more and more complicated. We discovered that the company's problems went beyond simple technological plagiarism to an elaborate scam. The founders used false technology claims and inflated financial statements to scam large investments. I sat in my office, staring at the densely packed data and reports on my computer screen, and felt a splitting headache. This case was not only about our company's reputation, but it could also affect the entire Silicon Valley investment ecosystem. "Alex," came Tony's voice from the doorway. "I found some new evidence." I signaled him to come in. Over the past few weeks, Tony has become a core member of this investigative team. Although there is still some awkwardness between us, I have to recognize his expertise. Tony placed a stack of papers in front of me. "This is a personal email from the founder of Memo AI. You need to read this." I quickly skimmed through them and my heart sank. The emails clearly showed that the founders of Memo AI knew from the beginning that their technology was bogus and that the entire company was a giant Ponzi scheme. "We must act now," I said. "The damage will only increase if we delay any longer." Tony nodded. "I agree. But Alex, you have to realize that once we make this information public, it could start a firestorm." I smiled bitterly. "Yeah, but sometimes the right choice is often the hardest." Over the next few days, we began a series of emergency meetings. We contacted other major investors and disclosed the results of our investigation to them. At the same time, we were preparing a report to the Securities and Exchange Commission. The night before we were about to take action, I got an unexpected call. It was the CEO of Memo AI, Andrew Thompson. "Mr. Foster," his voice sounded tired and desperate, "I know what you found. I want to talk to you." I agreed to meet, but insisted on a neutral location. We made an appointment at a small cafe in the San Francisco Bay Area. When I arrived, Andrew was already there. The once spirited rising star of technology now looked 10 years older. "Alex," he spoke, "I know I've made an unforgivable mistake, but please, give me a chance to make this right." I looked at him coldly. "Correction? Andrew, you lied to everyone. Investors, employees, the entire tech community. Do you think there's any room for redemption in something like this?" A flash of desperation flashed in Andrew's eyes. "I know what I did was wrong, but think about those innocent employees. If the company goes under, they'll all be out of a job. I have a plan that will solve this problem without hurting anyone." I listened to Andrew's plan with disgust. He wanted to continue to deceive and cover up his past mistakes with more lies. "Enough," I interrupted. "Andrew, you still don't understand the nature of the problem. This isn't just about money or a job. It's about integrity, about responsibility." I stood up. "Tomorrow morning, we'll present all the evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission. You'd better start preparing your defense now." Walking out of the cafe, I took a deep breath. The night sky was dotted with stars, and the Golden Gate Bridge loomed in the distance. I thought about the past few months, Olivia's betrayal, the unexpected partnership with Tony, and now this Memo AI scam. Life is so full of irony. The next morning, as expected, we filed a report with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The news quickly blew up. Silicon Valley rising star Memo AI allegedly fraudulent. VC giant exposes tech scam. AI startup bubble bursting? All kinds of headlines were all over the place. The next few weeks were a nightmare. Endless meetings, interviews, legal advice. Our company received some praise for revealing the problem in a timely manner, but we also faced questions and criticism from other investors. But in the midst of this storm, I found myself becoming stronger. I am no longer the same person who was filled with resentment because of my wife's betrayal. I learned to face the difficulties head-on and make tough but right decisions. One night, after handling my last conference call, I walked out of the office and found Tony still waiting outside. "Hey," he said, a little rushed, "I just wanted to say, you did the right thing, Alex. Not everyone has the guts to do what you did." I look at Tony and suddenly realize I don't hate him anymore. "Thanks, Tony. And that's thanks to your help." We smiled at each other and then walked to the elevator together. "By the way," Tony said, I'm going back to Chicago next week. I think it's time for me to start over. I nodded. Good luck, Tony. Really? After seeing Tony off, I stood downstairs at the office and looked out at the bustling streets of San Francisco. I pulled out my cell phone and hesitated before dialing a number. Hey, Sarah. It's me. I was wondering, is it time for me to come home for a visit? On the other end of the line, Sarah's surprised voice came through. Great, Alex. Mom and Dad have been asking when you're coming back. Hanging up the phone, I felt a sense of relief and anticipation that I hadn't felt in a long time. Yes, it was time to go home. To go back to the place I used to run away from and face the memories that I used to dread. I looked up at the darkening sky and felt the warm breeze. In a city that is always full of opportunities and challenges, I have experienced betrayal, anger, confusion, but ultimately found myself. I know that this is not the end, but a new beginning. No matter what awaits me ahead, I am ready. Because I've finally realized that true growth comes not from success, but from how I face failure and betrayal. With this in mind, I step forward to the next chapter of my life. The plane slowly landed at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, and I took a deep breath, feeling the air of my long-lost hometown. It's been almost 2 years since I've been back, since everything happened. Sarah was waiting for me in the arrivals hall, and the moment I saw her, all the exhaustion seemed to dissipate. Welcome home, brother. She gave me a warm hug. You look different. I smiled. I hope it's the good kind of different. On the drive home, Sarah gave a brief update on what was going on at home. Mom and Dad are fine, but they are always asking when I can come back. Our old dog, Cafe, left last year, but they adopted a new Labrador named Cola. By the way, Sarah hesitated, Olivia called me last week. She said she was getting married and wanted to know if you were okay. I was silent for a moment, unexpectedly finding myself as calm as water inside. Bless her for me, I said sincerely. Sarah gave me a surprised look. You're really okay? I laughed. Honestly, I'm fine. Really? So much has happened in the last year or so, but I think I'm finally letting go. The feeling of returning to my childhood home is both familiar and unfamiliar. Mom's hug was still warm and Dad's handshake still strong. At dinner, we talked about everything from the events at Memo AI to my future plans. So, you've really decided to leave Sequoia? Dad asked, a hint of concern in his tone. I nodded. Yes. This experience has made me realize that I need some changes. I want to do something more meaningful. Do you have any ideas, dear? Mom asked gently. I put down my knife and fork and looked around at the home full of memories. Actually, I have a plan. I want to set up a fund dedicated to helping small investors and employees who have been affected by financial fraud. Using the experience and contacts I've gained at Sequoia, I think I can do something for them. There was silence at the table for a moment. Then Dad raised his glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings. We all clinked glasses together. At night, I sat on the swing set in the backyard and looked up at the stars. Cola lay at my feet, watching me meekly. In the distance, there was the sound of the neighbors' children laughing and the occasional car driving by on the street. It was all so ordinary and so precious. I pulled out my cell phone and hesitated before tapping Olivia's number. It's been a long time since we've been in touch. Hi, Olivia. I heard your good news. Sincere blessings to you. Hope all is well with you. Alex? After sending the text message, I felt a sense of relief that I had never felt before. The pain, anger, and resentment that I once felt have all dissipated. In their place was the anticipation of the future and a newfound sense of life. The next morning, I woke up to get ready for my morning run. The moment I pushed open the door to my house, I was stunned by the sight before me. The entire neighborhood was shrouded in gold, and the autumn leaves shimmered warmly in the morning light. A little girl passed me on her bike, waving cheerfully at me. I suddenly realized that life is like this autumn landscape. There is the depression of falling leaves and the warmth of gold. The key is how to appreciate it and how to experience it. While running, I started conceptualizing my new project. Maybe I could bring Tony on board. He has shown impressive competence and ethics in exposing the Memo AI scam. I also need a good team of lawyers. Maybe Sarah would be interested? As I ran to a small park near my home, I stopped to take a short break. A lady walking her dog smiled at me in a friendly way. I smiled back, suddenly realizing that I hadn't smiled at a stranger in such a natural way in a long time. "Hi, I'm Kate," she offered to introduce herself. "I don't think I've seen you here before." "I'm Alex," I replied, "just back from San Francisco." We chatted for a few minutes and made plans to walk the dogs together someday. As I walked away, I felt a wonderful feeling. Maybe this is the beginning of a new life? When I got home, I found that Olivia had texted me back. "Thank you, Alex. I'm really glad you wished me well. I hope you find your own happiness too." The corners of my mouth involuntarily lifted as I looked out the window at the fall colors. Yes, I will find my happiness. In fact, I think I've already found it. That afternoon, I started drafting a proposal for my new project. I named it Phoenix Fund. Just like the phoenix rising from the ashes, I hoped that this fund would help those who had experienced setbacks to get back on their feet. Sarah saw me working and smiled. "Looks like my little brother is finally growing up." I threw a hug at her and we laughed and laughed like we did when we were kids. Late at night, I stood in front of the window, looking at the moonlit street. I thought about the past 2 years. Olivia's betrayal, the confrontation and reconciliation with Tony, the Memo AI fiasco. All these experiences have shaped the person I am now. I am no longer the Alex who was broken by betrayal, or the investor who only knew how to chase profits. I found a new purpose, a new motivation. Tomorrow, I will begin my new journey. I know there may still be setbacks and challenges ahead, but I am no longer afraid. Because I realize that true growth comes not from good times, but from how to get back up in the face of adversity. I turned off the light and lay down on my bed. Luna gently jumped onto the bed and curled up at my feet. I closed my eyes, my mind filled with anticipation for the future. It's not the end, it's a fresh start. I, Alex Foster, have finally had my rebirth. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.